I want to talk to you about, well, do black lives really matter? Now, I want to take you back in Richmond. Some of the things that been hurting the African American community for so many years have been the people that we put in power, the people that we put in charge. Now, some of those of you that's watching from the prison system, you can relate to what I'm about to say. Now, they talk about dirty cops. And you had some black cops that was dirty too now. And if you did prison time, or you know somebody that went in prison time and they talk to you, some of them might tell you what I'm about to tell you. You know, I know some guys that dealt in drugs. And they said, well, when they bust me, I had $20-some thousand in cash. But when it got to the precinct, it was only 10. Sometimes it might be 30 ounces when they bust a person. But when they get to the precinct, it might be 12. Enough to get you locked up and make a case. All police officers hadn't been fair over the years. And a lot of folks that are in prison shouldn't be in prison, and some should have never went because you tamper with evidence. And we as a community put power in the wrong hands sometimes. And when I'm saying that, a lot of people can't handle power, black or white. You give them a little title and a little position, and they go off in a zone all by themselves because they got a title and got a little position, and they mistreat their fellow man. And it's bad when blacks get a little power and mistreat blacks. I can even go back and tell you from my interviews I did with people at the Richmond City Jail. You had a sheriff down there that would walk down the hall, and when the inmates see him coming, they had to turn their back to the wall and couldn't look at him. Think I don't know what I'm talking about. So what I'm saying, do black lives really matter? It depends who's in charge of those black lives. And it's a shame when black folks get in power with all they went through, with all the history they knew about their ancestors and what they went through, that when you get in a position where you can make a difference, you play games. You mess up. Now, I'm going to call out a name. When Senator Benjamin Lambert was in office, he worked his way up to becoming the vice chairman of the Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee is how they distribute the money. They work with the budget, the state money, who gets what. And Senator Lambert always made sure that the historical black universities and colleges got money from the state of Virginia each and every year. That's something that he made it his business to make sure if VCU got money, Virginia Union gonna get some money, Hampton gonna get some money, Norfolk gonna get some money, St. Paul gonna get some money. He made sure that the black universities wasn't stepped over. Now, his next term, he would have been the chairman of the Finance Committee. He would have been number one. Now, some people got together and made sure he didn't get that spot. And once they got him out the way, guess what? The universities, colleges, get less money. St. Paul had to close, and now they're begging for money. That's just a little bit of history. Why, when a person can get in a position to do something for you, either we put the wrong person in position, or you do something to make sure you get rid of him so he can't help your community. Now, enough of that. We're going to get to our next video. But it's just something to think about. Why do the people that we put in position don't stand up for black lives? Don't fight for your black community. But they can always come to your church during election time and tell you that they're looking out for you. If they had looked out for you, if they had looked out for me, our community wouldn't be where it's at today. They didn't prepare a place for 2020 for the African American community. No, they didn't. And on that note, Famous Brown saying, I hope you ain't mad for what I said. But go back and check behind me and see that I know what I'm talking about. They had black police officers that were setting up black folks, black drug dealers, taking some of their money and not turning it in, taking some of their drugs and not turning it in. And they done it for years. And they done it under black leadership. Now on that note, going to the next video. Nobody gets down like Famous Brown.
Tonight, our nation celebrates one of its most inspirational leaders and activists by honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We know all that he came and dealt with racial fairness and lost his life in that fight. But did you know that there are investigations that have gone on about how actually he died? See, most of us think that we know exactly how he died, how he was shot, and it was an open and shut case. Well, guess what? This is an amazing tale that you're about to hear from Michelle Greenstein about what has been uncovered regarding his death. I'm gonna hand it to you and let you take it away, because in my conversations with you thus far, I have been drop-jawed listening to you.
And so was I. I actually spoke earlier today to Dr. William Pepper. He actually, on behalf of Coretta Scott King and the King family, filed a civil suit in the case of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, this is the only trial that's ever been held about this assassination because, as we know, James Earl Ray, after he pled guilty, meant there was no trial. So this is the only trial that's ever been held. Now, we're all familiar with the official story of this lone gunman, right, in 67.
James Earl Ray, shot up.
He was in jail for armed robbery. He somehow escaped.
Admitted to it.
Right. But what's interesting is that he pled guilty, but he didn't confess. And actually, in these court transcripts, he says over and over, I did not confess to killing King. And he says he only did so because he feared for his life. He and William Pepper told me that the only reason James pled guilty is because it was the only way to save his life. Now, he did this as a last resort, and he was actually told by his lawyer, Percy Foreman, that he should take the guilty plea because that's how he was going to get a new lawyer. So he saw this as his only way to get rid of this bad lawyer and get a new lawyer. And interestingly enough, he filed for an appeal days afterward and tried to get a new trial. So like I said, I spoke to Dr. Pepper earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow.
He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken to the St. Joseph's Hospital, and he was killed in the emergency room of St. Joseph's Hospital by the chief of neurosurgery, Dr. Breen Bland, who came in when they were all working on him in the emergency room, and he said, get out of here, let that die. And as they moved out of the room, the last one out was a surgical nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, and when she heard them gathering up spit in their lungs to spit on Martin's body lying on a bed there. Then she saw Dr. Bland take the catheters out of Martin's body and take the pillow from under his head and put it over his face and suffocate him. And that's how Martin King died. That's how he was really assassinated. Now, he might have died anyway from the bullet wounds, but he didn't. He was still alive and still breathing. The chief neurosurgeon, he intervened and he made sure that death would result.
Wow.
Right? My jaw was on the floor. Now, Dr. Pepper knows this because the son of the nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, who died, but before she died told her family, the son of this nurse told Dr. Pepper under oath. And when Dr. Pepper confronted a member of the Dixie Mafia, he said, yes, this happened, and actually that the chief of surgery was their family doctor, and that 3 weeks before the assassination, he visited them and said, hey, if the bullet doesn't kill him, make sure he goes to St. Joseph's, because we will make sure that he dies. Now, let's talk about this case, okay? This was a civil suit in 1999 where Pepper represented the King family, and that really made the family feel like they had closure, and like I said, it was the only trial ever held. The Memphis jury in this case decided that local, state, and federal governments were liable for King's death, and that this was a real conspiracy, a conspiracy between the U.S. military, the Memphis PD, and Dixie Mafia, these crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee.
This is just for the audience.
Right.
This is a civil case that was brought, much like the O.J. case.
Right, where a
they
jury
couldn't find him guilty here, but finally when a civil jury heard it, they came out with a
It was the only trial, yes, and there was 30 days of trial, and over 70 witnesses were heard. And Dr. Pepper told me earlier today that it took the jury less than an hour to decide after these 30 days
that this
of
was
trial.
a true conspiracy.
Correct.
Where others may have been involved.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man, and that he was unwittingly, unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot.